Chapter 20 9 Days Until Christmas. "Hi, Lucy," Joe said as he walked into the library after the last bell of the day had rung. Lucy was standing at Miss Marwich's desk. He smiled when he saw the librarian. He'd been meaning to tell her about how the angel tree had helped him. "Hi, Miss Marwich." "Good afternoon," Miss Marwich said. "I was just telling Lucy how nice it is to see Valentine back and doing so well." "I'm really happy she's okay," Lucy said with a smile. And then Joe saw her frown the tiniest bit. "What about Tango? Is he okay?" Joe wondered if something had happened to Miss Marwich's cat. He hoped not, knowing how much Miss Marwich cared about him. But Miss Marwich just looked confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Oh, I just thought—" "Never mind," Lucy said. Joe could see that Lucy was uncomfortable. "We should see if Max and Cammy are here," he said to her, figuring he could thank Miss Marwich for her advice later. "I believe the rest of your outfit awaits in the back room," Miss Marwich said. "Good luck with world domination." "I thought Miss Marwich smelled like the vet's office," Lucy said as they walked back, Valentine leading the way. "I guess I was wrong. But it's weird. That smell is pretty distinctive." "Maybe it's a doctor's office or something," Joe said. He hoped nothing was wrong with Miss Marwich. Max and Cammy were already at the table when they walked in. Cammy was looking at the suspect list on her phone, but by now Joe knew it by heart. Alma Sanchez and the Von Wolfs were out, and the two remaining possibilities were Mr. Pink and the Bristers. Joe didn't want to think about what might happen if neither turned out to be GB. But then again, the Bristers looked nearly certain, so there was probably nothing to worry about. "Should we go to try to talk to the Bristers today?" Max asked. He was clearly ready to jump into spy mode, and Joe felt the same. He was eager to solve the mystery once and for all. Cammy shook her head as she slipped her phone into her pocket. "I talked to my grandma about them last night, and she said that Mrs. Brister is always at her Friday afternoon bingo game at church. I think we have a way better chance of getting her to talk there, when she's out already, than showing up on her doorstep. So that means today we get to check out the Pinks." "Let's do it," Max said, pushing back his chair and gathering his stuff. The day was bright and sunny, but fiercely cold as they headed out of school and into town, and Joe felt grateful for his warm new coat. Main Street, with its glittering Christmas lights and festive decorations, felt familiar to Joe now, and he paused to look in the window of Bits of the Past, an antique store where there was an old-fashioned chess set with pieces that were clearly hand-carved. Seeing it made him think of Ariana and the chess club, and he realized it had been a while since he'd thought about his old school. "That jacket would look awesome on you," Max said, from behind him, pointing at the bright red velvet jacket on display. Joe gave him a withering look as the girls giggled. "I was looking at the chess set," he said. Cammy's eyes widened. "You play chess?" she asked. "Yeah," he said as they began walking again. "Do you? It would be fun to have someone to play with in Pine River, even if Joe's chess set just had plastic pieces, nothing like the ones in the store." Cammy shook her head vigorously. Not really my thing," she said, looking like she was going to start laughing again. Joe looked at Max, who just raised his eyebrows and shook his head, clearly thinking the same thing Joe was. Sometimes girls were really weird. Outside Handyman Hardware, Cammy turned to the others and opened her mouth. We know," Max said before she could speak. "Try to steer the conversation toward the angel tree or books." Joe couldn't help adding, "And see if we can get them to admit their last name is really Bink instead of Pink." For a moment he worried Cammy might be offended, but instead she burst out laughing and Joe's cheeks warmed with pleasure. He'd forgotten how fun it was to joke around like this. Max gave Joe a high five, then opened the door to Handyman Hardware and led the way inside. It was crowded. Joe saw Mr. Pink up on a ladder pulling out a box of nails. They edged their way to the counter, where two salespeople were ringing up customers. Mrs. Pink stood behind him, talking on the phone. Yes, she was saying, we'll be getting those in on the 20th. How's that? Valentine yelped as someone stepped on her tail, and Lucy knelt to comfort her. Cammy shot Max and Joe a look. This was not a good time to investigate. The store was way too busy. But then Mr. Pink caught sight of them. Hey, kids, he said as he stepped off the ladder and tucked the nails into a box on the counter. I'm heading out on an errand for the angel tree, but let me get someone to help you. Joe tried to think of something he might need to buy, but Cammy was 2 steps ahead. My grandmother needs a new hammer, she said, and I think it's great you're doing something for the angel tree. Mr. Pink nodded absently as he looked around for a free salesperson to help with the hammer. Yep, I take my orders when they come in from the big boss, and then we do our best to take care of our part. Joe saw Lucy bury her face in Valentine's fur to hide her disappointment. Mr. Pink, oblivious, flagged down one of the 2 salespeople. The person in charge of the angel tree sure does work hard, Cammy said. Joe admired her for not giving up. She was clearly hoping to get some kind of clue as to the identity of GB. But the sales clerk was headed over, and Mr. Pink was pulling on his jacket. Do you have any idea who's behind the angel tree? Joe blurted out. It wasn't subtle, but they were running out of time. Mr. Pink shook his head. That has to be the best-kept secret in Pine River, he said. Jada here will help you with the hammer, and I'll see you all later. As Cammy answered Jada's questions about the hammer she didn't really need, Max grabbed Joe's arm and pulled him out the door and after Mr. Pink, who was heading down the snowy sidewalk, a box of supplies tucked under one arm. The thing is, Max said as they caught up to the surprised store owner, we really want to figure out who's behind the tree so we can thank them. We know it's supposed to be a secret, Joe said, but it just seems to us like it's their turn to have a Christmas surprise. After all the great Christmases they've made for everyone else. Mr. Pink nodded thoughtfully. That's an awfully good idea, he said, and I'd love to help, but honestly, boys, I have no idea who it is. Can you think of anything that might help us? Joe asked. Mr. Pink was quiet for a moment, considering. Well, I'll tell you one thing I've been thinking about, he said. It seems to me that the boss behind this whole operation is slowing down. Slowing down? Max asked. What do you mean? In years past, the boss got that tree up early, and a wish barely lasted a day before someone was taking care of it, Mr. Pink said. The sun was setting, casting a shadow across him as he spoke. The past few years, though, everything has taken a bit longer. The tree goes up later, wishes are up longer, the instructions come slower. What do you think that means? Joe asked, puzzled as to how this information fit in with what they already knew about GB. I suppose it could be any number of things, Mr. Pink said. Maybe the organizer is just busier, but my guess is that the boss is getting on in years. Father Time slows us all down sooner or later, and I think he's been catching up with the boss. Now, if you'll excuse me, boys, I do need to take care of this. Thanks, both boys called as Mr. Pink headed to his pickup truck parked across the street. So Mr. Pink thinks GB is getting old, Joe said, considering what this meant. That fits with what we know, Max said, and the Bristers are old. Yeah, Joe agreed as they walked back toward the hardware store, but it also means that we really need to find GB now more than ever. What do you mean? Max asked, his eyebrows scrunching together. If GB is slowing down, she doesn't just need a thank you, Joe said. She needs help to keep the tradition of the angel tree alive.